Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show, where we help you make the wisest and most profitable decisions. My name is Dr. Gleb Tsipursky. I'm the CEO of Disaster Avoidance Experts, the future of work consultancy that sponsors the Wise Decision Maker Show. And I'm joined today by Simon. Simon, can you please introduce yourself and share a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, of course. Good to be here, Gleb. Simon Brown, I'm the Global Learning and Development Leader for Ernst& Young, responsible for learning across 400,000 people around the world.
Excellent. And we recently attended both the Microsoft CLTO Connections Conference for Chief Learning and Training Officers. And we talked a lot about generative AI. So I'm curious about your impressions from the conference, what you've gained, what you've learned, what you think might be useful in thinking about integrating generative AI into company learning.
Yeah, I mean, I was already super curious about generative AI before that, and the conference just further reiterated it with the power of what we're going to see from some of the Gen AI tools over the coming months, and also hearing some of the forecasts of where things are going to be even a little bit further into the future. Yeah, there's lots of takeaways.
So let's talk about some of those takeaways. One of the things to think about is how CLTOs should be thinking about integrating generative AI into their learning platforms, into L&D learning and development. So what are your thoughts about some of the specific ways, some of the specific insights you had about what learning and training officers should be doing around this integration?
Yeah, so I see two aspects of it. So one
Mhm.
is from how do learning organization, or how do we use Gen AI within a learning organization? So how can it
Mhm.
help us to create content faster, more sophisticated content,
Mhm.
or to help learn in different ways? So actually learn through having an AI assistant, an AI coach. So as a
Mhm.
responsible for a learning function, we need to be thinking about that side of it, of how can it help in the learning process.
Mhm.
And then there's the second piece, which I think is then how do learning leaders and learning teams build Gen AI skills within the organization?
Mhm.
Organizations need to understand what's the impact of Gen AI on their business, on their strategy, on how they work day to day. And learning plays a key role in that in terms of building that understanding, that knowledge, and those skills
Mhm.
relating to Gen AI.
Let's talk about the second one, about specifically how learning leaders should be integrating skill building around generative AI. So the first thing to think about is how do you align the learning skills around generative AI with the broader goals of the organization? Kind of what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, so I think that's an overall question around one's learning strategy. So how do
Mhm.
you take the strategy of the organization, take that through typically an HR strategy, and then down
Yep.
into the sort of learning strategy, and then making sure that then as we're prioritizing what are the skills that we need to build, what are the roles that need most focus, etc., that all of that is aligned to the business strategy and where things are going. So I see Gen AI as very similar to that in terms of, if it's already part of the organization strategy, and many organizations now already seeing it as part of their strategy,
Mhm.
then it flows through that as one of the key skills that need to be built, and then comes to the learning team then of how to respond in a very
Mhm.
agile way, maybe in a faster way than typically
Mhm.
learning has had to respond in the past, with things changing on a daily, weekly, monthly
Yeah.
basis. And so that's, from an EY perspective, that's how we've looked at it, of how do we actually get that skills out quickly, build that skill at scale across the whole organization.
Mhm. Mhm. Definitely. That makes sense. Now, one of the difficulties, so I've helped a number of companies figure out how to integrate generative AI into their learning and development platforms. And one of the challenges I've seen is that this is an area where learning leaders are learning themselves. It's not like a
Yes.
traditional skill that people have had for decades. Learning leaders can go and learn the skills and then convey it easily and then build programming around conveying it. It's something that learning leaders need to learn themselves. What is generative AI? What are the relevant skills that they need to learn? And then also, after learning it themselves, they need to convey this knowledge to people in their organizations. And the thing is, they're not the experts. I mean, the closest to experts you'd find is people in IT, but still plenty of people in IT are not really experts on generative AI. So how do we handle this dynamic? What have you seen as good ways of handling this tricky dynamic?
Yeah, I think we need to be curious ourselves as a
Mm.
starter. And certainly, if I look at my own personal journey around this, I think it was March 2023 when I first got my hands onto ChatGPT and started to have a play, and my mind was blown about actually
Yeah.
how this transformed things. And so from that point on, it was then, okay, how can we make sure that the understanding around the potential of this tool and this technology is there? And that's within learning, getting people to start to play with it. How can that be helping us to do things better, but also making sure that that understanding, that knowledge of the potential is also there more broadly within the organization as well. So I think it starts with the learning teams being curious and sort of scanning the horizon as to what's coming. And in this case, Gen AI, I think, is an area that is going to have a huge impact, and therefore it's key for learning teams to understand it, not necessarily to be the deep experts, but at least have an understanding around the impact it's going to have, and therefore what's needed by way of whether it's strategic skills, whether it's practical skills around adoption, whether it's the sort of skills of everybody using co-pilots and other tools in terms of their day-to-day work.
That makes sense. Now, one of the challenges I've seen in companies I've worked with is that employees tend to be somewhat worried about generative AI in terms of job displacement, and especially people who are older. They don't know if they should learn this new thing that in their 50s, they may think it might not impact their careers. Others who are younger have a lot of anxiety around learning it because, again, fears around job displacement. And we have seen a number of companies saying very explicitly that they are either not hiring or firing a lot of their employees because of the generative AI is replacing a lot of functions in customer service and other areas. So what are good ways you think the companies who are trying to integrate and teach their employees around generative AI should address these underlying anxieties that might make their employees reluctant to learn?
Yeah, so the approach that we've taken within EY is to make sure everyone has an understanding around it. So what that looked like has been a lot of communication around AI, giving people access to our own internal tool, which we call EYQ, which is our own GPT that's trained on EY data and things and provides that safe environment. And then we've provided training across the whole company. So we now have 300,000 people who have been through our AI Now, which is our core training around AI. And then as we roll out more tools, we also cover things like ethical AI in terms of making sure that people understand what's important around data privacy and around security and all of these pieces, which tools to use when. And so that way it takes away some of that fear around it, because actually we understand what it does, what the benefits of it are, and then have the ability to learn and to use it. And from a learning perspective, there's a lot we've done, whether that's the fundamental level for everybody, but also we have more sophisticated badges. We have what we call our EY badges, and there we've created badges around applied AI, AI engineering, and responsible AI at 3 different levels. And we've had nearly 100,000 people across the company now who have either got or are working towards one of those badges. So that way it's creating the opportunity for everyone to build the new skill and to get the awareness of it as well. And yeah, that seems to be going down well, that people are embracing those opportunities. And we see a lot of people building those new skills in Gen AI.
Excellent. Let's double click on those badges and talk about what each of those involves. So tell me a little bit about what the baseline training involves, and then go a little bit deeper into the badges. What does it take to get a badge after you get a baseline training?
Yeah, so the badges work on the basis of both learning and the application of that learning. So it's more than just, I've completed a course. And then those badges come in 3 different levels. So in this case, we have silver, bronze, silver, and gold for each of those 3: applied AI, AI engineering, and responsible AI. And then what we've done for each of those is we've then curated content in a variety of forms, from reading materials to hands-on labs to be able to play with different technologies, etc., to traditional courseware. Some of that is our own content, some of that is through partners, and we curate those paths, put those into those badges, and then have people work through and then demonstrate how they're applying that in order to then be able to earn those badges. And that's worked very well for people to be working towards earning something, but also to come away then with confidence of actually applying those skills into things as well.
Now, when I think about UI, you obviously work a lot with clients and you're using generative AI tools when you work with clients. So are you working on teaching clients how to work with generative AI tools? So thinking about UI professionals teaching clients about the kind of skills they learned. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, so a core part of our business is helping clients around the challenges that they're facing, and
Mhm.
AI is many of our clients are wrestling with. So yeah, there's a lot of people across EY are involved in supporting and advising clients around Gen
Mhm.
AI. From a learning perspective, we're also taking our own experience and sharing, you know, what's worked and what hasn't as part of that as well. And because it is, as you referenced earlier, such a new area that we can't go back and, you know, look at 10 years ago, you know, how do people do it, because we're all
Mhm.
exploring at the same time. So we can then look at, you know, what are our experiences, what worked, what didn't work, and then how do we
Mhm.
take that and yeah, hopefully that's helpful then in the conversations that we can have with our clients around showing, yeah, the way that we've done and, you know, what we would do differently.
Excellent. Now, as we finish up, what are you thinking about the future of learning around generative AI at EY? What do you envision? What are your plans? What do you want to accomplish?
Yeah, so we're already starting to incorporate AI into our learning programs. So I was on
Mhm.
a course last week that we were offering where Gen AI is embedded within it. So there were
Yeah.
elements there around actually prompting as part of it. So I was able to go in and practice my prompts, and Gen AI would give
Mhm.
me feedback on how I can improve my prompts.
Yeah.
And it was also generating content around the context of me, around my role and things as part of
Mhm.
the courseware. So we're already starting to see Gen AI used within the content, not just
Mhm.
to produce the content. It's actually sort of dynamic live content. So I think that's very interesting. We're also starting to use AI in a coaching capacity for certain trainings, so that you can actually go through a role play that is an AI generated role play, and you're getting then feedback based upon, you know, what you put into that role play. So
Mhm.
I think more and more we're going to start to see Gen AI not just powering how we produce content from a traditional sense, but actually looking forward to that we'll have more sophisticated content that are actually more dynamic based around Gen AI as well. And then we'll need to continue to build those Gen AI skills across the
Mhm.
workforce rapidly as things evolve and things change, in order to make sure that we're staying at the cutting edge of what's happening.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Simon. I really appreciate you sharing your expertise. This has been very helpful.
Great to talk to you. Many thanks.
And thank you to the audience for checking out another episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show. Please make sure to subscribe wherever you checked out the show and leave a review. It helps others discover the show and helps us improve the show.
Perfect.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
Let's